Actions of Compassion. This is going to be lesson 1 of a 4-part series of lessons, one for each chapter of Ruth. That's not everything that's included in the book of Ruth, because it's really a very rich book from the Old Testament talking about things, the cultural things going on at the time of the Judges, the period of the Judges. Just a wonderful story of love, and this book of Ruth is a love story. But more importantly, it gives us some ideas about compassion. Compassion is, and we've talked about it before, sympathy for the suffering of others, often including a desire to help. The desire to help should be there as we approach. You know, if we do an act of compassion without desiring, having a desire within us, then basically it does us no good. If we're doing something for good, not intending it to be good, God wants us to feel. God has compassion for each and every one of us, and of course Jesus is our great example of compassion. But the story of Ruth and Naomi in the book of Ruth serves as another great example of how we can understand compassion, and just examples of how we can be compassionate and what it means to be compassionate. So in the book of Ruth, Naomi, who is Ruth's mother-in-law, she's in a foreign land. They have left their territory in Judah, Bethlehem in Judah, because of a famine. And instead of staying there and quite possibly helping to correct errors in the community or in that geographical region, because of the famine, the husband decides to move to Moab, which is a foreign land. So sometimes natural disasters are a lead up to moving, that God wants us to move, that God wants us to do something. But sometimes it's that we just haven't stayed and corrected the correct problem, or made an attempt to correct the problem. If it's something that God is causing this famine because they've been disobedient, they need to stand up and do what's right and trust in the Lord to keep them safe for that time period. How do you do that in that immediate time frame? I'm not sure. But whatever you do, you trust in the Lord. Well, they decided to move to Moab. And when they moved to Moab, the two sons take wives of women of the Moabites. And the Moabites are, even though they're related to a degree to the Jews, they're not of the same religion. So these two sons take these two women as their wives. So in the course of time, the father dies, leaving Naomi as a widow. The two sons die, leaving the two daughters-in-law as widows also. And because of this, Naomi becomes very bitter against everything and everybody. And because she is a foreigner in a strange land, she has no rights. She's got no way to take care of herself, and she's got no way to take care of these two daughters-in-laws that are now maybe in essence her responsibility. We'll discuss that in a moment. So bitter, heartbroken, she tells the two daughter-in-laws, I've got nothing for you. I can do nothing for you. Go back to your parents. And that was something that, you know, would their parents even accept them back now? What's the community going to think of them? Are they going to be able to get husbands? You know, that's, Naomi says, I can't get you husbands. Why? Well, there's no dowry money. And you had to have a dowry back then. You know, the woman without a dowry wasn't worth very much. So all of these things are coming on to make her again bitter and heartbroken, and there's no reason really for them to stay around. Naomi can see no future for any of them, and with no future in sight, she develops a very pessimistic view of life. So what she's decided is, daughters-in-law, go back to your parents. I'm going back to Bethlehem in Judea, and I will die there in my homeland. Now, one daughter-in-law leaves upon hearing this and follows Naomi's instructions, essentially. But on the other hand, Ruth stays. And in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 and 17 says, But Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you, for where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. Now, we've heard that at marriage ceremonies, haven't we? And, some people are just not knowledgeable enough of the Bible to realize this is a daughter-in-law talking to her mother-in-law. So there are some contexts in which we can equate this with marriage, but more so, it's this concept of showing compassion to others. And so we're going to look at this, and we're going to look at 5 actions of compassion from this real-life story of love, and that'll help us to be, I think, more compassionate people, or to truly be a compassionate people like Jesus, because, these ladies, they're in Jesus' lineage to a degree. Ruth is, because when Ruth marries Boaz, a couple generations later comes David, the king. A couple generations later. David the king. So, number 1, we show compassion by sticking with someone through tough times. And that's what Ruth was telling Naomi, is that she was going to stick with her through thick and thin, no matter what happened. Yeah, okay, Naomi, you want to go back to Bethlehem of Judah? I'll go with you. Because when I married your son, you became a part of my family. I left my family to be with his family, so I'm going back with you, and whatever happens to us back there is going to happen together, but I'm going with you. And no matter what happened, she was going to be at Naomi's side. Naomi, her idea is, look, I can't offer you, I can't take care of you. And we'll see in a moment that wasn't the point. That wasn't the way Ruth was looking at it. That's the way Naomi was looking about it. She saw no hope for the future. So love has a sticking power. At least that's what my wife tells me. No, it is. Love has a sticking power. Love binds people to one another, even through some very tough times. Proverbs 18:24, see, it's just not marriage, it's just not necessarily even family. Proverbs 18, verse 24, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. There are people out here that just want to make friends of everybody, and they're friendly with everybody, I'll put it that way. And it's all right to be friendly with everybody, but they're just special friends you need in your life. And that when hard times come, that they're going to be sticking close to you. And that can be a tough thing to do. It's easier to have 1,000 friends than it is to have that one friend that you can open up to and really talk to and express yourself to. Marriage can be like that. Family can be like that. But even there are some times when you need a friend that it isn't about family. See? It's not about the marriage. It's about things about family and marriage that you need to run by somebody, because you just got no inkling about what's going on. So you can see how this compassion was shown. It was an action of compassion, not just the words, hey, I'm going to stick with you. It was the fact she stuck with her. They were like glue. They are bound together. Secondly, we show compassion by adjusting to others according to their needs. I think that's the difference between a person who is compassionate and a person who's narcissistic. A person who's narcissistic, it has to be about their needs. Everything's about them. It's what they want. It's what they feel. It's about what they need. And, that's not very good for a relationship, is it? So, again, it's a two-way street. But we need to be looking at, how can I help this person? Sometimes the way we can help a person is to be kind of tough with them, right? Tough love. Yeah, tough love. We talk about it with our children, but sometimes even our friends. We've got to use some tough love. There may have to be an intervention. Talk about intervention, of some sort. And it comes from compassion, but we adjust and we give up some of our own satisfaction or the sense of being satisfied. I'm happy with the way my life is. I really don't want to deal with this problem. Okay? But life throws problems at us that we have to deal with. And if we do it in a compassionate manner, rather than in just a coarse, obligatory nature, oh, there's this problem, I got to deal with it. I'm the only one that can deal with it, and I've got to take care of it. Blah, blah, blah. No. The compassionate. How can I make this a better situation? What can I do to help others? And bring people together to bring about a good conclusion to a matter. Ruth says, and there again in verse 16, your people shall be my people, and your God my God. So she's making some adjustments here in life. Now, give me a moment. Now, connect that thought. I want to jump ahead. Marriage is more of a series of adjustments than anything else. Would you agree? Adjustments. And if we're not willing to adjust, then the marriage is constantly going to be at odds. So, family needs are kind of the same way. Here, two families, right? You got Naomi's family and you got Ruth's family. But Ruth has kind of given up her family. I know it was when Karen and I got married. And then when the kids start coming along, man, what do you do with holidays? What do you do with Christmas? Well, the way we would do it, Christmas Eve we'd spend with my family. Christmas Day we'd spend with her family. Until we moved. Made everybody unhappy. Okay? But that was an adjustment that we could make to kind of bring things together. Thanksgiving Day at her parents', Thanksgiving evening with my folks, usually at my grandmother's, when she was still able to do those things. Well, religion's kind of the same way, but you cannot be of two different faiths. Cannot be of two different belief systems, okay? And I realize that within Christianity, there are a lot of similarities, but still there are things among different groups that aren't similar. So Ruth kind of recognized this, but somewhere along the line, in spite of Naomi's depression at this time, okay, she saw a validity in the religion that Naomi and her husband and her sons had. Whether they went away from Judah wrong or whether they were right for moving, I don't know. But God's purpose is being worked out here because Ruth saw some value in that religion over her religion. There's something good about this. And Naomi may be sad, she may be depressed, she may be pessimistic, but I want to be a part of that. Now, Naomi may have previously been very vibrant and pleasant to be around. And if you go to Ruth chapter 1 and verse 20, look at that. When they finally get back to Bethlehem of Judah, The women are out there as they're coming into town. They're saying, "Oh, isn't that Naomi? We haven't seen her for a long time." And she says, "Don't call me Naomi anymore, because that means pleasant. Call me Mara, because that means bitter, because the Lord has treated me bitterly." She wanted to change her name. But before that, she was probably just one of these women, maybe a fantastic woman who was a fantastic wife and a mother and a companion. See, that was good to be around, but the circumstances of life that caused this depression to come upon her. Truth must be the important consideration, though, when we're talking about these adjustments that need to be made. Don't make adjustments just to make adjustments. Make sure they're the right adjustments. You know what used to happen? You go over to the rabbit ears on the TV and you turn them a little bit, and as soon as you sat down, the picture would go off again. And then you go over and you sit down and it's off again. What's wrong? Okay, make the right adjustments so you don't have to be struggling through, because the wrong adjustments can lead to some pretty bad problems along the way. So, number 3, I believe this is, we show compassion by reaching beyond our comfort zones. Beyond our comfort zones. Hey, you talk about getting beyond your comfort zone. Look what Ruth says in verse 17. "Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried." Naomi, you want to go die? You want to crawl under a rock and die? You go ahead. I'm going to be right there with you. I'm not leaving. Wow. She's going to be with her to the end. And until death parts us. And we hear that in marriage vows, don't we? For better, for worse, richer or poor, in sickness or in health, till death do us part. And listen, here's the important thing. It's more than just responsibilities. It's got to be. It's got to be a desire to want to do that. Because if it's just a responsibility, what happens with us in responsibilities? We get tired of them, don't we? We get tired of doing something because it's expected of us. But you know, if we want to do the right thing, and we find joy in doing the right thing, it's going to be okay. We'll do the right thing, even if it means getting out of our comfort zones for just a little bit. And that's what Jesus did in Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Talk about getting out of a comfort zone. Think about the discomfort that he went through. He came here as a human being, and for the most part, he was rejected. Everybody wanted to argue with him. Even his own disciples, the ones closest to him, wanted to argue with him. "No, it's not going to be like that, Lord. I'm here, and that isn't going to happen." And then think about the trials leading up to the cross. You know, they nearly beat him to death. He was in such bad shape when they took him to Pilate that Pilate was kind of, "What? You beat him this bad? You're not supposed to do that. Save something to crucify." And then the crucifixion itself. Talk about somebody getting out of their comfort zone. For us, well, there it is. Luke 9:23, "And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." You know what that means? Getting out of our comfort zone. See, those people knew what it meant. That if say the children were coming home from school, or the farmers were coming back into town from working in the fields, and they saw a person walking out of town in the middle of some soldiers with a cross, carrying a cross. They knew what it meant, coming back. And that's what we need to do in our lives sometimes, is take that position, I'm not going back. I'm not going back to the way it was before I met Jesus. I'm not going back to the way it was before I gave up these things. Before I became a Christian. I'm not going back to that. And that's what Ruth is saying. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. So reaching beyond our comfort zone, and that means a lot of self-sacrifice. And really, that's what it's about, isn't it? Crucifying the old man of sin so that we can walk in newness of life. We show compassion by offering encouraging words from the heart. Gotta love Facebook. A lot of encouraging words on there, aren't there? Well, sure there are. Oh, Nancy doesn't know. She's shrugging her shoulders.
I don't have a smartphone.
But it's
sorry.
there. And everybody's got an encouraging word, and you have to wonder, do they really mean it, or are they just doing it to do it? I'm sure there are some sincere people that do it for the right reasons, but others, it's just, you got to wonder. Again, Ruth 1:16, do not urge me to leave you or return from following you, for where you go, I will go. The worst part of having a problem is many times you just have to face it alone. And that shouldn't be. We shouldn't have to face it. There's some things that the only one who can correct it is us alone. We got to take those steps. But it's so much nicer when there's others there encouraging us, truly encouraging us to make those decisions. And Ruth is saying, don't worry about how you're going to take care of me, Naomi. I'm here to take care of you. Now let's work out this problem. Wouldn't that be great if we all had somebody to take care of us when we had a problem, so that we could work the problem out? Sure we do. And listen, Naomi was bitter, right? Because she lost. She lost a lot of things. What did Ruth lose? She lost her husband. She lost her family. She lost her country. She gave up her religion. She gave up a lot too, but look at the difference between the two. One, the problems crushed her. The other one, the problems grow her into a beautiful person in the image of Jesus Christ. Nearly 1,400 years or so before Christ even comes. That's the example we see here, isn't it? What he's going to be. Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. Did you ever see one of those pictures on the wall? Apples, the foil, gold foil apple in frames of a setting of silver. Frame of silver. Very beautiful, right? Beautiful. And that's the way these words of encouragement can be to the person who is down, to the person who needs the help, to the person who's struggling. Words of encouragement and love can have a great impact. Hey, how about Matthew 11:28 through 30? Think of the words of Jesus. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden. Well, dummy, why is that the last place I always go to? Why is Jesus my last resort? I think first resort. It's there. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's a two-person yoke. We like to carry around a one-person yoke, don't we? Maybe that's when we become Christians, we take off the one-person yoke and we put on a two-person yoke, and the person on the other end of that yoke is Jesus. And then we have the scripture that says, casting all your cares upon him. Give them to him, and he'll take care of them. May not be in our time, but in his time, he'll take care of it. And it's going to be all right. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I'll take that. That's what I need right there. We show compassion by putting others' needs above our needs. Verse 18. And when Naomi saw that she was determined, that's Ruth was determined to go with her, she said no more. There wasn't anything that was going to stop Ruth from being the person that Naomi needed as much as anything else in her life. That encourager, that helper, that one who was going to stand by her, to stick close. No amount of talking was going to stop Ruth from going, so there wasn't any need for Naomi to argue. How many times some people ask us, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing okay. Yeah, I do it all the time. And most of the time that's the truth. But sometimes when I'm struggling, I got an ache, I got a pain. Most people don't ask you, how you doing and want to know really how you're doing. It's just, I got people that pass in Walmart all the time. Hi, good morning. How you doing? And they walk on by. They don't care how I'm doing. It's just an expression. But see, here we are. It didn't matter how uncomfortable the journey was going to be to Ruth. They didn't know what they were going to find when they got back to Bethlehem. Were the people going to treat them badly because Naomi had left and her family had left? Were they going to be singled out because Ruth was a Moabitess and didn't belong there? What was going to happen? See? You don't know. But I guess if you're going to starve to death in Moab, you may as well starve to death in Judea. What difference does it make? It didn't matter whether there was going to be food to eat or not, and Ruth was determined to stick with Naomi because Naomi needed a friend. And that's the point there. It wasn't because Ruth needed Naomi. Ruth did this because Naomi needed Ruth. Which leads us to our story. Our story. 1 Corinthians 13:7, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And that is a story, the story of Ruth and Naomi is a picture of God's love for us. Because Jesus doesn't want us to be his friend for his sake. He wants us to be his friend for our sakes, because we're not Ruth. We're Naomi. Whether we like it or not. We're Naomi. We're Mara. Because in this world we become bitter. We need to be pleasant, Naomi. But still, Naomi gets depressed. So we need a friend. Jesus is that friend that we need. He'll stick through us through tough times. He'll adjust to our needs. That doesn't mean that he'll do something outside of his will, but what we need, he'll take care of. He'll reach beyond his comfort zone for us as he has in the past. He'll offer words of comfort and hope every time we open that book. There's hope. There's encouragement. And he put our needs first when he went to the cross for us. And he's still thinking about our needs. So we get back to Proverbs 18 and 24. You know what that is. There's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. But this friend is our brother. He's our older brother. As God the Father is our spiritual father. Oh, words of encouragement. I hope you get something. I hope you get a lot out of that one this morning. There's some good story. And we'll look some more at Ruth in the next 3 weeks. So keep that in mind. Be reading that and just get the encouragement out of it as you see it. Get those pictures of what's going on, and you'll see Jesus in there in every passage, in every part of it. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. If you have a need, let your request be made known as we stand and sing the invitation song.